Hi guys, my name is Ryan. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is an easy, quick, general guide for each boss fight in Blackwing Lair. This is not a full Blackwing Lair strategy, but is something you can quickly reference before each fight in Blackwing Lair if you need a once-over on what to do. You can check the description below for links to each specific boss strategy within this video. Remember that there are multiple strategies for certain bosses, and that this is just what has worked for us. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. Otherwise, have a wonderful day and good luck in Blackwing Lair. Razorgore. You need great DPS for this fight, so use consumables here. For phase 1, place the range DPS and spare healers in the center of the room. Have a tank and heals and evenly split DPS in each corner. There are 2 adds or 1 dragon that spawn every 15 seconds or so. The kill order should be mages first, then dragons, then legionnaires. When a dragon spawns, call it out and have range DPS that are in the center focus on that dragon. For example, Dragon West, Dragon East, etc. The designated orb controller, which is typically a tank or hunter who can feign, uses Razorgore to break the eggs. Once there are only 2 eggs left, stack behind the pillar on the south side. Give the tank a second to gain aggro, and pop your greater fire protection potions now. This part is not a race, it's a marathon. Do not pass your tank's threat. And before the fireball, melee should be getting out and dodging behind that same pillar. For Vaelastrasz, you're going to position every healer and ranged in a tight stack behind the square where the melee stand. Have your main tank positioned right in front of her, with the 2 other tanks positioned on the opposite side of her from the melee group. Have the melee position to the right of her back right leg about 5 yards out. Everyone is going to get a debuff that essentially gives everyone endless mana, rage, or energy. Every 15 seconds, Vael is going to target a mana user with a debuff called Burning Adrenaline. It's similar to the Baron Geddon Bomb in Molten Core, except instead of a time limit, it removes 5% of your health per second. When you die, you explode. When ranged get this, they immediately need to run to the back corner of the room, to the left from where you came in, and essentially let the debuff kill them there. Every 45 seconds, however, the person with the highest threat, assuming it's the tank, will also get this debuff. The other tanks need to be ready to grab Vael as soon as the main tank goes down from this. If the tank dies before getting Burning Adrenaline, the fight is essentially lost. Everyone, especially melee, need to watch their threat here carefully. If someone pulls, it's almost impossible to recover. Rogues particularly need to utilize Vanish to dump their threat, and use Feint on every single cooldown. For the Suppression room, you need to continuously be moving. Have 1 to 2 of your rogues continuously disarming the trap so you don't suffer movement reductions. Those rogues shouldn't be in combat, preferably staying in stealth, and should only focus on the traps. Do not single target the whelps. Have 1 tank assigned to holding aggro on them all, and do not let anyone DPS them. The whelps will respawn after they die unless Broodlord is already dead. You want to kill them all at the same time with AoE once you have almost too many on your tank, or when you need to get out of combat to get a quick res off. Have a hunter carefully pull 1 dragon at a time, or 1 group of 3 orcs at a time. For the orcs, simply sheep 2 of them and take them down 1 at a time. For the dragons, be sure to interrupt their flame strikes. You don't have much room to move here, so those can be fatal. Remember to always hug the walls to avoid getting unwanted aggro. When you are at the end of the Suppression room, you will have to quickly get everyone buffed and powered up while still holding on to some whelps with your main tank. Once you're ready to engage Broodlord, AoE the whelps down and immediately run in. Determine 2 rogues to get the 2 traps closest to the gate. Those rogues will stay out of combat and only be in charge of the traps. Have your tank stack in the front right corner, your ranged on the other side of the doorway, and the melee need to use line of sight to avoid the AoE. Broodlord does a Mortal Strike effect which reduces healing on the target by 50%. You want your main tank to typically be the one with the highest health. We use an oddball strategy and have a Druid Bear tank, which works well here with their high health pools. This is again a threat-based fight. As long as no one pulls, you should be fine. Do not let the tanks die, melee stay out of the AoE, and do not pull threat, and this should be a breeze compared to the first 2 bosses. For Firemaw, have your range stack right outside the doorway, far away but still close enough to DPS the boss and heal the tanks. Have some or all of the tank healers and a melee healer positioned with the melee right around the corner of the doorway, utilizing line of sight with the corner. Tank's positioning is key for this fight. If this is failed, it will be a wipe very quickly. The ranged and melee need to cross into the line of sight safe zones once they get 4+ stacks of the debuff. The debuff will dramatically increase the amount of damage you take from Firemaw. Line of sighting it will allow it to fall off. Position the tanks to the left of the doorway along the wall and gate as shown in the graphic. The off tank needs to tank Firemaw when the main tank gets wing buffeted, until the main tank can taunt him back. Again, knockbacks occur on the tanks here, so positioning is absolutely key. Get positioning down, watch threat and debuff stacks, and you'll be a-okay. 3 Drakes Trash. The first pull is going to consist of Warlocks, a Spellbinder, and an Overseer. The initial pull here is very important. Have a hunter pull by attacking the technicians and kiting them. The techs throw bombs every few seconds, but as long as the person they are targeting keeps moving, they will be okay. If someone else takes aggro from the techs, they need to run away from the group so that way they don't get everyone bombed. Immediately after the techs are pulled, have a tank grab both the Warlocks and a tank grab the Overseer. The range should be focusing on the Warlocks first, then AoE the techs down. The Warlocks should be focused down ASAP by everyone as they spawn portals which spawn Felguards. Typically you'll get about 2 portals and Felguards per trash pull. The Warlocks do Rain of Fire, so have the tank pull them out of it ASAP so that the melee do not sit in it. Once the Warlocks are down, make sure your raid Warlocks are ready to banish the Felguards. Have the melee move to the Spellcaster and, once the techs are AoE down, the ranged can join them on the Spellcaster. The Spellcaster casts Flame Strike, and even if it looks like it's interrupted, it can't be interrupted. Don't stand in this. Once the techs, Warlocks, and Spellcaster are down, take care of the Overseer and Felguards in whatever order works for you. Again, these trash pulls are very tough and require raid-wide coordination. Pull carefully. The second pull has Wrathguards and Overseers. Wrathguards and Overseers need to be tanked far away from each other since they do AoE stuns around themselves. Have a hunter or other hunters kite them out of the room through the suppression room. Make sure you've re-cleared this after you've killed Broodlord because nothing will respawn in the suppression room after Broodlord has been killed. Have the raid lead call out when the hunter should feign death and let the mobs come back. The 3rd through 5th pulls involve Warlocks, Spellbinders, and Overseers. These pulls are very similar to the first pull, except the positioning is also important. Everyone should stay at the bottom of the ramp for the pull unless you are a pulling hunter, a healer, or a tank. The kill order is the same as the first pack, but there are 2 Spellbinders for parts of this and 2 Overseers as well. The 6th pull is the same as the 3rd through 5th pulls, but on the top platform. Utilize the right hand side cubbies to get the Spellbinders to move, which interrupts their flame strikes. The 7th pull is the same as the first pull, except they are all harder hitting Worm Guards. Kill the Goblin first, unless a miner needs to learn to smell Elementium, in which case you can mind control the Goblin and teach all the miners that spell, then kill him. Once you kill him, you should focus on each of the Worm Guards one at a time. The Worm Guards that aren't being attacked should be kited away, similar to how they were by the Hunters in the first pull. Once you're ready for a second Worm Guard, have a Hunter feign death, and the 3rd Worm Guard have the other Hunter feign death. These pulls can be very complicated, so again, exercise caution, but you should be okay. For Ebonroc, have the entire raid group start using line of sight behind the ramp, while the main tank pulls Ebonroc to the corner. Have your other 2 tanks create a triangle of sorts with the melee facing directly into the corner. The melee typically either don't have to move at all or move very little to stay behind the Drake as each tank taunts. Ebonroc casts a curse that causes Ebonroc to heal when he strikes the cursed target. As soon as the tank is cursed, one of the other tanks needs to taunt off of him. The tanks need to wear their Onyxius cloaks for this fight as well. Overall, it is a fairly simple fight. Just make sure your tanks are positioned very well here. What else is new? Flamegor is almost the exact same fight as Ebonroc, but he frenzies, so hunters need to be trank-shotting him whenever this happens. 3 seconds before the wing buffet, have an off tank taunt off the main tank. Only 2 tanks are really needed for this fight, instead of the 3 needed for Ebonroc. This fight's pretty simple as well. You guys should have it. Chromaggus. The first thing you need to understand about Chromaggus is that he will be slightly different each raid ID. This is because there are 2 breaths that he does each week out of a pool of 5. Ignite Flesh is a strong dot. Incinerate does 3.5 to 4.3 thousand damage. Frostburn reduces attack speed by 80% and does about 1.4k damage. Corrosive Acid does about 1k damage every 3 seconds and reduces armor by 4 to 5k. Time Lapse is the tough one. Whoever is hit has their health reduced by 50% and their threat is wiped. Start the fight by having a Warlock summon a designated raid member. That raid member then goes and pulls the lever, then immediately takes the summon back to the group. The group should be standing flat against the wall to the left of the doorway. The main tank will grab main aggro, while the off tank will go ahead and build threat while still running out back to the group before the first breath. This fight requires a lot of decursing. The afflictions that go up are all removable except for bronze, which is only removable by the hourglass sand which drops throughout Blackwing Lair. This sand should be used sparingly by the tanks, healers, and hunters. Mages, druids, and paladins need to be decursing the entire fight, and the entire raid should be using restorative potions. If anyone gets to 5 afflictions, they will transform into a dragonkin and wipe the raid. If there is no time lapse at the first breath, after the first breath, have all the melee and a few decursors run into the cubby to the left of Chromaggus. They should be using this cubby as line of sight to avoid getting hit by any breaths. If you have Bronze Affliction, be sure to run into the corner when there is about 10 seconds until the next breath, in case you get Bronze stunned. If the first breath is time lapse, the off tank needs to immediately grab Chromaggus while the main tank avoids the breath, then handing Chromaggus back to the main tank after the breath is over. If there is a time lapse in general, everyone must stay out of the safe spots and get affected by time lapse. I repeat, everyone has to get affected by time lapse if that is one of your breaths every time it happens. This ensures that the threat stays with who it needs to stay with. Hunters will need to be constantly knowing a rotation of tranquilizer shots so that Chromaggus never stays frenzied. At 20%, he will enter a secondary frenzy which is not trankable but also will have the typical frenzies happen, which still need to be trank shotted. He will hit much harder at 20%, so be sure you time it right around the easier of the 2 breaths for your raid to handle. He will hit much harder at 20%, so be sure your time is right so you get the easier of the 2 breaths for your raid to handle. Also keep in mind that he switches vulnerabilities similar to the Overseers and Wormguards from before, so casters should be using this to their advantage. This fight sounds complicated, but as long as decursing is on point, healers watch the tanks, and the hunters trank, you should have this. Nefarian. First, you're going to want to split the odd and even groups as evenly as possible in regards to how much DPS each side can do. For example, don't put all your strongest DPS on one side. Everyone should have a greater shadow protection potion used before the fight starts. After speaking to Nefarian, the gates on the south and west sides of the room will begin having draconoids come out of them. Ensure hunters use a few frost traps to slow down the adds in case they aggro onto the ranged. The ranged need to be stacked on the corner of the pillars. Nefarian will be porting around the room and using Shadow Bolt, hence the greater shadow protection potions. Ranged need to move in order to line of sight Nefarian's Shadow Bolt. These will continue to spawn until 42 have been summoned. As soon as chromatic draconoids come out, all the melee need to switch to them immediately. Use your cooldowns during phase 1. Regardless of how fast you kill the adds, they come out at the same rate, and they come out fast. They need to go down immediately. About 10 seconds before the adds will stop spawning, Nefarian will come down in his dragon form. There will still be adds up. The tank needs to grab him and move him to the center of the balcony, facing towards the balcony. Heals need to keep the tank alive while everyone finishes off the adds. Nefarian will do fears. Melee can avoid these fears by using line of sight behind the broken pillar to Nef's back right. He will also do class calls. These can be seen on the screen now. Mages must always be out of line of sight to the healers and tanks, especially right before a class call. Rogues can use Vanish to move from the class call or Evasion to avoid being killed. Warlock Infernals should be dealt with immediately during their call. Warrior Call means big heals on the tank. At 20%, Nefarian will spawn a massive amount of undead Draconoids from the gates during Phase 1. I advise having hunters put down frost traps at each door around 23%. Also, I wouldn't push past 20% if you are currently experiencing a priest or mage class call. Everyone needs to AoE these adds down ASAP, while also having the healers keep the tank alive. This is where a lot of wipes happen. Your mages, warlocks, and other AoE classes will be vital here. You can use Stratholme Holy Water to AoE here as well if you wish. Once those are dead, it's pretty much the same as it was before he hit 20%. If you've made it this far, you can do this. Congratulations. If you found this helpful, please give it a thumbs up below, and if you want to be alerted of future videos or streams, be sure to subscribe as well. My main content is streaming every single week. I stream raids every Thursday and Friday, and any other Elysium content at various times during the week as well. The times are listed below, and I really hope to catch you in the next stream. Thanks again for watching, and I will see ya in the next one.